I don't think any of us are going to have Tiger bets. I don't think any of us are going to have Tiger on our card, but it's something that we need to talk about.
You're talking coin flip against Tiger? That actually might interest me a little bit.
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Long Shots here on VSiN Masters Edition. Matt Brown, Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds coming to you. We are going to go top to bottom, everything we are looking for over at Augusta National, what our models spit out to us, and of course, our betting card. What are we actually putting money on this week? But fellas, it is that time of year. We have moved into the first major. We are starting to try to figure out. This is one of those tournaments where the odds have been up on the board for a long time, right? Yep. And so as we sit here and try to decipher, okay, has this moved too much? Did we get, is there any value left on some of these things? It's the only betting event really in golf where the odds are up way, way, way in advance for us to take advantage of. And I know at least all of us have a couple of kind of old, stale numbers that are in our account. We will still talk through whether we think the current numbers are right or not. But Wes, you over at VSiN.com do a breakdown each and every week of the course and what we're looking at here. We know it's 89, top 50 and ties are going to go at it. What do we see from Augusta National over there?
Yeah, look, par 72, 75, 55, seventh longest course on tour. Plays a little bit longer because you do have the elevations. Average score over par was like 0.95 for about a stroke over par. So one of the tougher courses on tour. I think it ranked fifth toughest. Firm and fast, as usual, even though we're probably going to get a little bit of rain, at least in the initial forecast on Thursday. Wide fairways here, too, about 51 yards on average. This is the widest fairways, actually, on the PGA Tour this year. So this is not a place where you get in a ton of trouble off the tee, even though there are trees, even though there's pine straw. Rough is not very thick at all. So you do have obstacles if you have errant tee shots, but pretty easy fairways to hit by tour standards. Greens are going to be slick, pure bent grass. This is the first time these guys have been on pure bent grass. Certainly the PGA Tour guys all season. So could run as low as 12.5 or 13, could run 15 by Sunday. So these are going to be fast greens, so they can fall off the greens into the shaved runoffs. Not a lot of rough around the greens, so you're scrambling, which we'll get to in the modeling and stuff. You got to have good approaches, good recovery chips. Longer hitters certainly can benefit here. The par fives you really got to take advantage of. Not a lot of bunkers here, but they are difficult. So the sand save percentage is like, I think, 47%. But, pretty straightforward. The fact that it's the same course that they play every year, the only major to do that. So the only changes, I believe, for previous years, I think the 10th hole got lengthened by about 10 yards, but very modest changes to what we saw last year.
Yeah, I think I saw a couple tee boxes that got messed with a little bit, but like you said, Wes, not a whole lot there.
Kelley, as we look at this weather report, it was looking like we might get a couple of days of rain. Now that's backed off. Looks like we might only get 1 day of rain. I think that does change our handicapping at least a little bit in all of this, because if you have 2 days of rain, the course likely going to stay soft the whole time. They do have the aeration system underneath all of the greens. They're able to control this a little bit better than most. But, look, if we go by what we think, if we think it's going to rain on Thursday, likely to get softer conditions on Thursday, maybe that increases the scoring conditions out there as well. And maybe that comes into play with how we go about attacking even some of the first round leader markets, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, there's been a lot of talk from guys out on the course so far this week that things are pretty firm, running fast. So if they're scared of that, a little rain might help some things, might help us see a little bit lower scoring over the weekend, right? Soften some conditions. I'm glad you brought it up. I know it's one of the things we should hit off the top, because we're sitting here recording this on Tuesday afternoon out on the West Coast. We bring this up almost every week on Long Shots when we're talking weather, but make sure you're checking these weather forecasts, because things can change and they can change rapidly. And as we sit here right now, I mean, it looks like Thursday, almost start to finish, could be a complete, could be a washout. We're talking 85, 90% chances of rain. You're going to have heavy winds. So I know I've heard a couple people talking about where they think there's different wave advantages, and that might end up being a case, right? But as of right now, it really doesn't look like that way to me. So I just know it's always something that you should be able to, you should try to target in your golf betting if you can get an advantage at one end or the other. But we've all been seeing tournaments where, okay, the rain comes on faster and stronger than we all thought, and everything just gets pushed back. And then that throws off your entire strategy. So I think if anybody's looking, anybody listens to Long Shots regularly, you hear me bring up first round leader bets often, I have a feeling I'll probably be dialing back a little bit this year just because this weather is so up in the air right now on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll talk about this whenever we talk about stats that matter in all of this. But of course, the wetter the conditions, the less rollout you get. And so some of these other things might come into play whenever we're putting our models together. Guys, we're looking at this odds board. No shock. Scotty Scheffler, plus 450 over at DraftKings to get this thing done. Rory McIlroy, 11. Rahm, 11. Xander Schauffele at 14. Brooks Koepka at 18. Hideki Matsuyama is sitting at 20. Jordan Spieth at 25. Joaquin Niemann at 28. And then we get into 30 and longer from there. As we take a look at this odds board at the top, Wes, I know there's going to be a lot of people who look at Scotty Scheffler and say, come on, 450, this is like Tiger in his peak. But if you kind of go in and look at the ball striking numbers and you look at the stuff that Scotty Scheffler has done, it actually is kind of Tiger in his peak, what's going on right now with all of this. And so I know people are going to get scared off by that number, and I'll fully admit I don't have an outright on Scotty Scheffler, but I can't argue this number as we sit right now. Like, it's very hard because the more shocking thing to me would be if Scotty Scheffler isn't somewhere in the mix come Sunday.
Yeah, he's obviously the guy to beat. And if you look at the reason why, not just the win equity, already having won twice this year, but leads the tour in strokes gained total, leads in tee to green, leads in approach, leads in greens and regulation, birdie or better, scoring average, birdie average, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a reason why he is the clear favorite here this year.
Kelley, as we look at these guys at the top of the leaderboard, of course, Rory McIlroy, a guy that we paid a lot of attention to last week to see what that form was going to look like. He did put 4 rounds together, which I think is encouraging. That said, our overall 2024 sample size for Rory McIlroy has not been all that great. So we see him as the kind of the co-second favorite here with Jon Rahm, a guy who's now moved over to LIV. And while we do have some LIV stats to go off of, we really are just kind of taking a leap of faith when we go with Jon Rahm. That said, not that far removed from the PGA Tour, so we at least have some sort of recency with him.
Yeah, he's I think two different golfers here that I have different levels of interest in, right? You're right, Rory. We didn't really tout him very well last week. Kind of talked about how we thought he wasn't going to have a great tournament. Like you said, I was impressed where he showed up last week and put up a good 4 rounds. I'm still not running to bet him here at the Masters at this number just because of what you brought up, what he's done really on the season as a whole. Jon Rahm, he's not a guy I've got pre-tournament, but man, he's a guy I've got my eye on. I'll be holding a bullet or two back to fire live, and he's definitely one of the names that I have circled. Like you said, not far removed from PGA Tour play. He seems to be clearly angry at just the world heading into this tournament. I don't really, his comments recently have been really interesting to me of, okay, you left for LIV after you said forever you weren't going to go to LIV. You went to LIV. Now you're complaining about the format on LIV. You get angry, pissed off Jon Rahm coming into a tournament that he won just a year ago. I might have some interest in betting him as we get into it.
Wes, as we look at these odds, we look at our recent winners. Of course, Jon Rahm winning last year at 9-1, Scotty Scheffler at 16 the year before that, Hideki 45, Dustin Johnson 9-1, Tiger Woods at 16, Reed at 50, Sergio at 40, Willett at 66. Everyone thinks Willett was like a bomb, but Willett actually was in good form heading into the Masters.
He had won some big boy DP World Tour events.
Yeah, so he's actually in good form. He's 66-1, Jordan Spieth 10-1, Bubba Watson 25-1. You get the trend here, guys, in which that the longest shot, the only triple-digit guy to win anytime soon was 2011 and Charles Schwartzel. So as we look at this odds board, I'm not going to say you stop, at some point, but it is very unlikely if we kind of go off what we've seen here that a bomb wins this tournament.
Well, and there's any number of trends that confirm that. I think 11 of the last 12 years, the player that won 16th or better in the world golf ranking, Matsuyama, was 25th in 2021, so not all that far. And, guys that have had experiences, 14 of the last 14 have had a top 10 at some point during the same season. 8 of the last 14 have won earlier in this season, and that's like a 3-month span. So guys with experience here are who you want to go with, but that doesn't mean a debutant who hasn't won here since '79, since Fuzzy Zeller, won't at least show out. Remember, Will Zalatoris was right in the mix a couple years ago in 2021. What was interesting to me, though, is 6 of the last 10 Masters winners 29 or younger. Usually you think this is like, old grizzled veterans in their 30s or even mid-30s or late 30s, but a lot of young guys have won this tournament. Obviously, Rahm and Scheffler fall into that.
Kelley, as we take a look, it is 67 PGA Tour players, 12 players from LIV. There's going to be 5 amateurs in the field, 4 senior past champions, and 1 DP World Tour automatic qualifier that make up your 89 total players in this. But something that, as we kind of start to break this down, there's going to be a storyline about the LIV guys. There's going to be a storyline about who gets paired with who and all of that. I don't know if you took any of that into your handicapping this week of who might be feeling pressure or who might be whatever, but is that something that you at least looked at?
As far as the mental side of that, no, not really much I considered. And this is, look, I think what we saw last year with Masters betting and the LIV golfers is very different than what we're seeing this year, right? We saw very different pricing on those guys a year ago heading into the Masters. And there's not a lot of LIV guys I'm considering, but we'll hit on those when we talk our picks.
Yeah, it's an interesting breakdown here of the odds board. There are going to be some names, namely that Tiger guy, who have massive numbers next to them. And again, guys, this is just one of these sternest tests, Wes. We can't really emphasize it enough. You have to have every single shot in the bag. And so you're going to look and you're going to see some guys that are super, super long. It's like, man, it's worth a shot. This guy's 150 to 1. This guy's 180 to 1. Augusta will humble even the very best golfer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that this is kind of a predictive event, and arguably the most predictive event that we have on the golf season, guys that tend to play well here always play well here. That doesn't mean you can't get a really good finish for a guy that's kind of a middling player, at least historically here. But yeah, you want to look at guys that are consistent here.
When we come back, we'll take a look at the stats that matter. What did we plug into our models and what did it spit out here on Long Shots? Hey, if you're listening to this, you obviously have some interest in betting the Masters. And so what better way to get prepared for that than our Masters betting primer? Head on over to VSiN.com/guide, and we are going to give you a look at some golfer profiles, some of the early best bets that we had, and a couple of different looks at guys on the upswing, guys on the downswing whenever they're heading into this week over at Augusta National. VSiN.com/guide for a free copy of our Masters betting primer. It is Long Shots here on VSiN. If you're listening to us over on the podcast version, hello.
Yeah. All three of us in the same room for once. Well,
stick around, some bonus content whenever we get off air here. Yes, or you're going to have to go download the episode over on your favorite podcast provider so that you can get our little after the bell stuff that we have going on here, guys. Talk about some players that we didn't get to whenever we were breaking down everything here. But let's talk about the stats that matter. And Kelley, I'll start with you here on this. Our disclaimer, if you're listening to us for the first time, this is something we always say. We are not programmers. We did not make these models. So when we say our models, what we really are saying is the models that we put the information in and let someone else do the algorithm, and then it spits out the information to us. So when we say our model, this is what our model, my model looks like. That's someone else's work that we are plugging in the numbers to and then having it spit out the stuff like that. I use 3 different ones. I kind of aggregate the results of all 3 of those, and that's how I come to whittling down my player pool. And Kelley, I know you would use a couple, as does Wes. So let's start with you. What stats mattered to you this week? What did you plug in? What did you favor? What did you come back off of? And what do you think maybe you looked at more than other people out there?
I think it's, this tournament's really simple, right? You just got to be long off the tee. You got to be great with your long irons and second shot. You got to be good around the green. The greens are really fast, so putting's not. It's really simple, but it's stats that I looked at. Strokes gained off the tee, driving distance. I think that matters here every year. Wes, you brought it up a little bit earlier. You're not dealing with as penal rough, so it is kind of like it's the one thing I think the players get a little leeway with. You can be a little bit more inaccurate off the tee, if you will, and choose distance over that. So that for off the tee stats, and then strokes gained approach, and then looked at a couple different proximity buckets: 150, 175, 175 to 200, 200 plus, just a little bit more there. Look, scoring outside of the par fives is tough on this. So I looked at get opportunities gained, which basically give you a birdie look inside of 15 feet compared to the rest of the field. That's one I plug in very often, probably more than most others I feel like I bring up during the pod. Look, the par fives, over 70% of your scoring comes on the par fives. I factored that in very heavily this week. There are 4, got to be able to score on them. I looked at strokes gained on par 4s too, because the par 4s are very, very difficult. And to me, it's kind of survive the par 4s, score on the par 5. So both of those are really important for me to be looking at this week. So, and then a lot of scrambling around the green, sand saves, scrambling, and then 3-putt avoidance. I didn't really dig heavily into putting, like you brought up, Wes. Going over to bent grass for the first time. Not something I really dug into that much, but the 3-putt avoidance, the 3-putts will kill you in the Masters. So that was pretty much everything I plugged in.
Yeah, we talk about this each and every week. Sometimes we emphasize putting, sometimes we don't emphasize putting, depending on the tournament, the surface, the different scene like that. I actually didn't have any sort of weight on putting at all this week, specifically because it's so hard to putt here, and I think it neutralizes the field out just a little bit. I mean, obviously, we take a guy. There's several guys that have won recently that have had very poor long-term putting form, and we're able to figure it out because at the end of the day, nobody I think has a super huge advantage here. So I actually didn't go that direction, but I think the 3-putt avoidance thing is different than waiting like strokes gained putting.
Completely agree, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because I think we would all agree on this. But when you're talking about really fast greens or really slow greens, is when I really de-emphasize looking at it, right? If it's a specialty tournament where I know putting is going to come into play more, then that's when I choose to look at it more. But if you listen to this podcast long enough, you know it's not something I usually incorporate.
Birdie Fest, you look at putting because you need guys just to make every single birdie putt that comes about. Wes, anything different in yours? What did you think is there anything you think maybe you went a little bit heavier on than maybe a lot of people out there, or anything that maybe you went a lot lower on than other people out there?
Yeah, look, I did some like contextual stuff, like just overlapping like tee to green, and then I did a little heavier on approach. Over the last 9 Masters, by the way, the winner has been 6th, first, second, third, first, fifth, fourth, and sixth for approach in their winning week. So I think you got to be very good with your irons, especially your long irons, as Kelley mentioned with the proximity deal there. Driving distance I looked at because, there's not a lot of harsh penalty for getting into the rough, a little trouble finding fairways. So you don't have to be a bomber, but bomber's going to have an advantage here because driving distance is about 26% on average longer here than opposed to the average at the average tour stop on the PGA Tour. Par 5 scoring is something I weighted a lot too, because if you look recently and go back to 2009, I think it's 72% of the scoring has come on par 5. Last year, Rahm was 12 under. That was a winning score. 10 under came up from the par 5. Scheffler, 10 under the year before. 8 under came from the par 5s. Matsuyama the year before actually was over par combined on the par 3s and 4s, was 1 over, but was 11 under on par 5 for that 10 under 278 winning score. So you've got to be very good on the par 5s here and really take advantage of them. I looked at 3-putt avoidance as well. I think it's 4.2%, so that's the highest rate of any course on the PGA Tour for 3-putts. Bogey avoidance I looked at a little bit as well. Then I did scrambling and around the green, kind of a combo platter, and you can kind of get some overlaps in those statistical categories. But I think that you are going to have to be good because you got that short grass. It's not really thick around here necessarily, so you got to be, I think, pretty good at chipping and really looking around the green. Matsuyama and Scheffler, when they won the previous 2 years, third for around the green during their winning week, so I think that's going to matter. And then I did just stuff that you don't heavily model, but maybe you just want to look at for context. Strokes gained total at the Masters, and that's going to give you, obviously, the guys that have won here are going to be at the top of that. And then major championships, and I went back like the last 5-6 years, and it's going to be the usual suspects that are up there. So I wanted to see, okay, who's good, when the chips are down in the majors.
Yeah, for me, I tried something a little bit different this way. So I didn't factor in strokes gained approach just general at all. So I just went with buckets this week as opposed to just the overall strokes gained approach, because so much of the approach game really is just those long irons that I kind of don't care what you do from 100 or 125.
Right,
whatever.
That includes like wedges and whatnot.
So with that, I don't really care. So I didn't put it in at all, right? Because I don't want that influencing kind of what things spit out. So I only put in the long iron stuff, super heavy on strokes gained par 5 scoring, things like that. Because again, as Wes mentioned, all of the scoring basically comes on the par fives. Much, much heavier than I've ever done in years past. And so really, really super heavy on that a ton, and really big on driving distance, because I do think at least for the first day and maybe the first couple of days, we could see softer conditions out there. And with less rollout, long courses is anyway, and we know driving distance certainly helps, but if you're not getting those extra 10, 15, 20 yards of rollout and things are just landing and stopping, I need the dudes that can put it out there, right? I need the dudes that's got that have the carry in them. And so I factor that a little bit heavier as well. And so,
and what the longest we've ever seen this event play at this year, right? I mean, it's not a ton, but it is the longest that we've ever seen the Masters play at this year. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And that was the one thing, what you said about the par fives, the only other thing I wanted to add on was, as far as how different was this from what I've done in years past, I definitely weighted par fives way heavier this year than I have the past couple of years.
Super heavy for me. And so, guys, I did some crude math here, right?
Crude
and so
math. All right.
We have 89 players in the field, right? And we said, listen, Charles Schwartzel, 100-1, only guy in recent memory as a triple digit to win. I even took it down a little bit further. There's 3 guys at 150-1, 3 guys at 180-1, 8 at 200, 6 at 250, 5 at 300, 2 at 350, 3 at 400, and 13 at 600 or longer. That takes 43 guys out of the field there.
Yeah,
right?
you cut the field in half.
So
for sure.
89 guys, you cut the 43 right out of there. If we think that par 5 scoring is going to be imperative in this, right? So let's take guys that didn't fall into that category, that were in the bottom 20 in this field in par 5 scoring. That eliminates Chris Kirk, Harris English, and Denny McCarthy. If we think that driving distance is so incredibly important, let's take guys that fall into the top 20 in this field out of that as well. Russell Henley, Tom Kim, Brian Harmon, Justin Rose. That takes those guys out of there as well. That's another guy that's so 89, 43 lops off, gets us 46. That's another 8 guys. We're down to 39 players. If we think that the par 5 scoring is so incredibly important, we think that driving distance is so important, and we don't think that any bomb is going to actually win this thing. So of our 89, we're now down to 39 as we start to really form our player pool here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd bring up with the driving distance is I think if you're a really skilled long iron player, right, that can help make up for it a little bit. But yeah, overall, I mean,
like I said, crude math.
Right,
Yes.
Crude math. And I mean, look, I think as more of the past week or so has gone on, to me, Matt, the number of guys that can actually win this tournament, it keeps getting smaller and smaller every single time I dig into this more.
And Wes, you talk about how important approach is here. And so if you want to take it even a step further, guys, again, talk about this real quick, and we talk about it on the other side of the break. If you go to the guys that are bottom 20 in approach in this field just in 2024, so the guys are coming in real poor form with their irons, Tommy Fleetwood, Victor Hovland, Jason Day, Ricky Fowler, Sungjae Im, Patrick Reed, Minwoo Lee, and Patrick Cantlay. That's another 8 guys. That takes us down to 31 guys that we might be able to bet on this week, and we will see who we bet on this week when we come back. Before we get into our picks, before we get into what our models spit out, I don't think any of us are going to have Tiger bets. I don't think any of us are going to have Tiger on our card, but it's something that we need to talk about. It came out right before our recording. He says, I hurt every single day, but he's going to play. He's at least going to give it a go. We saw last time out, Wes, wasn't able to make it a full tournament. This is a much more difficult course to walk. This is the most difficult course to walk basically on tour whenever we talk about all the changes and elevation changes and all of the hills and all of that. So big number attached to Tiger's name, and I get it. Is there a bet to be made at all with Tiger Woods?
Maybe on the matchup market, depending on who he's matched up with. But you make that point about the walk for Tiger. Tiger did make the cut on the number last year, but keep in mind he was playing a twosome because Louis Oosthuizen withdrew, so it was just him and Joaquin Niemann. So that's a lot easier when your leg is hurting, where you don't have to stop and stop as many times, and you just got one other playing partner. And then he couldn't make it through. He has not made it through 4 full rounds up. Take out the Hero World Challenge at the Bahamas this past December. Since 2023 at the Genesis Invitational, he has not made it through 4 rounds. So he is matched up in a lot of ways. I think a lot of books have matched up against Phil. Tiger got the early action. Then all of a sudden you saw some steam, maybe because of what Tiger said in his media availability on Phil Mickelson, where Phil, I think it was like minus 115. Now Phil's about a minus $1.30. And look, Phil isn't exactly knocking him dead on live right now, but he is playing. competitive golf, albeit 54 holes, but he is playing in actual tournaments. So I can see why Phil is getting the money against Tiger in the match.
Kelley, we look triple digits on Tiger to win the thing. Top 5 is only 22-1, top 10, 9-1, et cetera, as we kind of go down the board here. Is there, I'm not going to say what is your approach to Tiger, because I don't think there is. You have one. Is there an approach at all to Tiger here?
I mean, look, for all the Tiger fans out there, I don't think there's going to be no surprise. For as much as we're going to say we don't have a bet, there's going to be no surprise if he makes the cut. Okay, the guy's only played at this tournament for a billion years at this point. Like,
and well over half the field makes the cut as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So that wouldn't shock me if it happened. I'm not betting it. I'll tell you though, if a matchup versus Gary Woodland is still a coin flip, I actually might be attracted to that Gary Woodland side. Even before those comments came out today. Obviously, Gary's a guy that I think a lot of us would be rooting for with what he had to go through with the brain lesion he had. But I mean, if anybody who's listening to Long Shots have heard me bet on Gary Woodland plenty of times over the past few years. So you're talking coin flip against Tiger, that actually might interest me a little bit.
Yeah, there is. Ultimately, I hate to say this because I'm going to, my heart of hearts, right, is going to be rooting for Tiger Woods. It's very hard for me growing up as a golf fan to not be rooting for Tiger Woods, but I can't see any bet on Tiger Woods getting into my account. If anything, it would be some sort of fade of Tiger, be it a miss the cut, be it a head-to-head against him, something like that, Wes. I don't have a great feeling about a guy who, again, we haven't seen play 4 rounds in forever, who comes out and being the one thing I will give Tiger, he's been fairly open with the media.
Yeah,
he's like, hey man, it hurts. Like I hurt. It hurts to walk. It's tough. All this. Like he's not playing it off.
He's done
like,
being coy.
He's not playing it off like,
where he always
whatever.
gives like the political answer, like, oh, I like my chances. I feel good. And then it's like, okay, he starts out rough and he starts really hurting like he did last year.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I look at it and I will root with my heart. I think my bank account, my bankroll though, will probably be against it.
Yeah, this is us being completely 100% transparent with you betting wise, because guess what? Tiger Woods is good for the golf. He's really good for the PGA Tour right now, who's having its problems. And if golf's good, there's probably more of you listening to our podcast every week. So we'd be rooting for Tiger Woods, but we're not betting against him.
Wes, we got some live golfers in the field, and maybe some of these made our cards, and if so, we can hold that off a little bit. And actually, we'll get to your bets here, the segment as it is anyway. So if any of these guys did make your card, you can let us know. But John Rahm we talked about already. Next guy on the board, Brooks Koepka, Joaquin Niemann, Bryson DeChambeau coming in under 40-1. We got some of these other guys in Dustin Johnson, Cam Smith, Tyrrell Hatton, Patrick Reed, Sergio Garcia. Even though Sergio played well and lived Miami this past week, and Phil Mickelson, Charles Schwartzel that are also in the field here. Some of these guys been on live longer than others. Some of these guys played better on live than others. Some of these guys obviously younger than others. So it's a weird group really of the live guys that are in here.
Yeah, and look, John Rahm obviously at the top has not won on the live tour. He's not finished worse than 8th though, so he's been competitive. But I still think it's a new deal for him. And like Kelley said earlier, he's kind of going through some things. It's like, okay, I made my decision, but there are things I don't like about it. There are things I like about it. Obviously, the money is what he really likes. But, Brooks Koepka, who you're already paying the discount with at majors, did not play well at Doral last week. And the year before, remember, he won in Orlando the week before the Masters. The only one that's on my outright card was Joaquin Niemann, and that was at a better number. I still think at anything 30-1 or above, it's worth it. Joaquin Niemann, when I looked at like tee to green and all that, it's like he's up there with the Schefflers and the Rahms and on distance as well. This guy, and plus he's got a lot of urgency too, because he's 93rd in the world in the World Golf Rankings. So he got a special invitation from the Augusta National Golf Club to get in here. He's not qualified for the U.S. Open. He's not in the PGA. He's not in the Open Championship. So this is one of your few opportunities now that you chose to go to live where you can get world ranking points. So you need to finish really, really high to work your way up in those golf rankings. Looking down, DeChambeau, obviously, remember he said par was 68 for him, and then he shot several over par that year. Really good off the tee, still the best driver in the game in terms of distance, but can't figure out the green, so I took a pass on him. DJ, you never know.
Yeah.
I would think he's motivated for the Masters, but sometimes he doesn't care.
But who knows?
But who knows?
But who knows?
But one guy, if you're looking for maybe like a low live golfer, I think I saw him at 12-1. If you just want to take who's going to be the low live player, like obviously like Neiman, but guy might have some value is Patrick Reed at 12-1. Patrick Reed just always plays well here. He's hasn't been really contending on live, but man, he finds his game at Augusta, and especially around the green, there's hardly anybody better.
Yeah, I have Neiman in a top 20. Not to say I won't pull the trigger on an outright on him either. As you mentioned, I mean, misses the cut at the Open Championship last year, and then from then on just went scorched earth. He's won twice on live, one on the Euro Tour, third, fifth, a couple of T4s, a T9, everything. And there is a couple of places out there where you can find live stats, and as far as like the ball striking numbers off the tee, all the everything, strokes getting told, he's just been absolutely on fire. Wes, he is on your outright card. Who else is on your outright card?
Yeah, and went with that. Look, I went with a couple short because you don't go too deep down the board. I did it. I know I'm going to get hurt again. I've done it a couple times over the last decade as he's tried to complete the career Grand Slam. But Rory McIlroy, 13-1 is the highest I found him. I like the way he played at the Valero last week, especially on approach. That's the best approach round he's had since the Canadian Open in 2022, where he won and shot 62 on Sunday. Still the best driver of the golf ball in the game, if you look at total driving. Over the winter, he resigned from that PGA Tour policy board, which I think took a distraction away from him. And look, that's all he's trying to do is win the Masters right now. It's the last thing for him to accomplish. He's been working with Butch Harmon, has made some trips out here to Las Vegas to work with Butch. I think it's been good for him. So Rory, 13-1. Xander Schauffele, I have a little better number. Best number out there is probably 16-1. If there's a second best player on the PGA Tour so far this year, I know other guys have won and he has not, but it's been Xander Schauffele. If you really look at the stats, second in strokes gained total, a little bit down the board for putting, but he was fifth on tour last year. So longest active cut streak on the PGA Tour, actually at 42, 9 ahead of Scotty Scheffler. So Xander, look, he's been second best for a long time. Like, this is the time. This is really the time for him to get going. Neiman, 30-1, I mentioned. Tony Finau, who has not been great in the majors of late, but prior to that was actually right near the top on a lot of these leaderboards, 43-1. 5 top 13 strokes gained to tee to green performances in his last 7. Gained with the putter in 3 of the last 4 starts. T2 at the Houston Open. I think that could have been a buy sign for him in his defense of his title. Tony Finau, 43-1. And then one guy that has drifted, Cameron Young, who was like 25-1 here last year. And he's in a little bit better form now, and he's 55-1 because he's got that loser label on him, like he can't finish because he's got 7 runner-ups and hasn't won on the tour yet. So widely tipped last year, 6 in strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds. And then Sahith Theegala, 55-1, who ball striking has really improved. 9th on debut here last year, 67 in the final round.
So we can take a look here at the matchups as well. You have Patrick Reed over Tyrrell Hatton. We got some placement market stuff. Rory McIlroy over Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele stuff, and there's some top 20s. We'll get to all of Wes's prop bets as well when we come back. And Kelley, we'll get into mine and yours outright. I don't have a super deep card, but one that I'm very, very confident in. I will put it that way. So I feel really good about what we got going. Rory, Xander, Joaquin Neiman, Tony Finau, Cam Young, and Sahith Theegala are the outrights there on Wes's card. Me and Kelley when we come back. Go ahead and subscribe to Long Shots Podcast in your podcast player of choice. And when you do, you're going to get Long Shots After the Cut Masters coverage, some leaderboard analysis. We're going to give you maybe some bets we want to put in play as well. Join hosts, me, him, and him. That's in the read here. All of our names, Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Something tells me you're not going to be there, though. I think it's Kelley Bydlon and Wes Reynolds.
Well, listen, I was wondering if someone's going to bring it up to where I didn't have to bring it up. We'll talk about it here in just a second. But again, VSiN.com/podcast. Go ahead, subscribe to Long Shot. You'll get all of the coverage we do for Masters just showing up in your podcast player of choice. Do appreciate you guys and all of your support. VSiN.com/Masters for all of our coverage. Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, Kelley Bydlon coming to you. Wes, I don't want to shortchange you on your picks here, so make sure we get all those in. We talked the outrights in Rory, Xander, Neiman, Finau, Cam Young and Sahith Theegala. Let's get to the rest of your card here for some of these top 20s placement markets and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'll have more of those.
Yeah.
And the one matchup I played so far, Patrick Reed plus 115 over Hatton. Mentioned that a little bit earlier. Hatton only one top 20 and 7 Masters appearances. Kind of doesn't really like this course. He's spoken like he doesn't. Patrick Reed, of course, loves this course. And even though he's not in great form, like him at plus money over Tyrrell Hatton.
It's like his one spot to shine every year, right? Like, you know what I'm saying?
And he is so good around the greens, and I just think that's where he makes it up. McIlroy, Schauffele, top 10 so far. Finau, Theegala, top 20s, top 30 on Russell Henley. I'll have a couple more placements as well, which will be at vsin.com/picks overnight Tuesday or early Wednesday morning. And then one prop that I did play, I played Christo Lomprecht as low amateur, plus 188. You might be able to find $2 out there. Number 4 world ranked amateur out there. Defeated Nick Dunlap, who's now a professional, and to win the Georgia Cup on Sunday. If you remember this name, Lomprecht, he was the co-leader at the Open last summer after round 1, shot 5 under, and you can't miss him because he's 6'8". Kid from South Africa, plays his college golf at Georgia Tech, right in the state, so I'm sure he's played this course before. He's so long off the tee, like he's going to rival Bryson off the tee in terms of distance. He's Bryson, Rory, Rahm, all the guys that are really big hitters off the tee. He's going to rival them. So Christo Lomprecht, a little bit less than 2-1 to be the low amateur and sit in Butler Cabin with the eventual Masters champion.
Kelley Bydlon, you put in some stuff into your model. Your model spit out some things. And what did you decide to throw on your betting card?
Yeah, let's talk the outrights I bet before this week. Like you said, we said earlier in the show, this is the one tournament where we kind of add bets as we're leading up to it. So I'd say one I still love out of these 3, and the other 2, man, they could maybe kick rocks for the week. Justin Thomas, 32-1. Hideki Matsuyama, 34-1. Will Zalatoris, 35-1. Now, JT, Willie Z, I'm not counting them out. These are both guys that we've seen have success here at Augusta National. They could still come through, but I didn't add anything more onto them. Hideki, on the other hand, it's like when we're sitting at the blackjack table, Matt, and you get 11 up against a 10. What are you doing every time? You're doubling down, baby. Give me Decky again. I dipped back in at 22-1, added him in a top 20 market pretty heavily as well. Hideki over Jordan Spieth in a tournament matchup, so a lot of Hideki Matsuyama bets for me this week. Other outrights I did bet add this week. Wyndham Clark, 35-1. We haven't had a debutant since when, Wes? 1978?
1979, Fuzzy Zeller.
Yeah, 79. I was off by a year. Okay, there you go. So we haven't had it since then. I played him in the top debutant market, a little sprinkle here in the outright market. Do think his game fits here well. We've never seen a guy roll into the Masters before who has a major championship already under his belt, so the pressure's not going to be there for him. Is his experience at Augusta there? No, it's not. But I like it. I love his game recently. Of all the PGA Tour players that we've seen this year, he's one of the guys that has been able to put it all together here consistently over the past couple months. So played an outright on him and then played top debutant. Didn't want to go too much further than that. Shane Lowry, definitely a guy I'm eyeing this week. He was kind of top 10 range in all of my models. We talked about how well he played in Florida. T19 of the Players, 3rd at the API, T4 at the Cognizant, 4 straight top 25 finishes at the Masters. And if we're talking rain, we know this guy can play through the rain. So outright bet for him, a top 20 bet for him. A smaller top 20 bet just because I did find a couple matchups I liked with him. Lowry over Morikawa and Lowry over Matt Fitzpatrick. Couple of top 10s. Xander, this is where I decided to go heavy with Xander, is in the top 10 market. Really do like him this week. Everything that Wes said about Schauffele, I believe to hold true this week as well. I'm just not going in the outright market. It's a heavier top 10 bet for me. Joaquin Niemann, same kind of thing. I didn't want to go with the outright. I'll flirt with the top 10, though, with the most consistent player on the LIV Tour right now is where I'm going to go there. Other top 20s. Talked about Shane Lowry, talked about Hideki Matsuyama. Siwoo Kim, another guy I really liked this week. Couldn't find a lot of bets so far that I really wanted to tie him in at. I thought that top 20, though, was a good bet to have him there. Again, tournament matchups. Matsuyama over Jordan Spieth. Doesn't mean Jordan Spieth can't have a good week. Not counting him out, but I thought price-wise, I had Hideki a little bit higher than what this current number is against Jordan Spieth. So played a matchup with Matsuyama over Spieth, and then the 2 Lowry matchups over Morikawa, over Matt Fitzpatrick. A couple props for me. Corey Connors, top Canadian. Corey Connors, one of the guys I like the most here, who I kind of left off the card for the most part, outside of this one bet. And then again, Wyndham Clark, top debutante. Already sick of using that word. Debutante.
Yes.
It's like totality from from the eclipse yesterday.
You know, one thing to add on from where you're at on that. So over at DraftKings, and of course we don't have DraftKings here in Nevada, but for those of you, the rest of the country that do, there's one matchup that really stood out to me, and Jordan Spieth is matched up against Will Zalatoris, and Jordan Spieth has gotten pushed out to minus 175.
Wow.
Over Will Zalatoris. You can get Will Zalatoris at plus 145. Now, if you go by my models, Will Zalatoris rates out higher than Jordan Spieth does anyway, but even if you want to argue, because of course history and all the things that are going on here, that Spieth should be a favorite, minus 175 ain't it. Like that number ain't it. So if I was able to bet that, certainly would be minus 175 on Jordan Spieth over Will Zalatoris. So I have some outrights in mine as well. So let's go to the two that were made previously to all of this, and then we'll kind of go back around. I also made Hideki Matsuyama and Will Zalatoris bets before the odds that are currently out there.
I like your numbers better.
You can still get Zalatoris at 40. It's creeped all the way to 40 out there in the market right now, so started to drift back the other direction. And Hideki you can find kind of still in that like 20-ish range or something. So the deal I will say about Hideki Matsuyama and the deal that I will say about Will Zalatoris, if you're talking about form for Hideki Matsuyama, he checks all the boxes and all the stuff we're looking for as we're heading into the tournament. On the Will Zalatoris side of things, what you have to do, and it's probably something that us in the bubble know, but if you're just kind of coming in and parachuting in to bet the Masters, if you look at the recent form and recent numbers, or if you even model and you haven't, and you just kind of got into modeling, if you plug in last 36 for Will Zalatoris, like he's going to not be anywhere near, because he was playing through a very serious back injury, right? So you have to kind of go back before the injury. And what do you see? You see a big tournament killer. This dude loves hard courses, loves really tough fields, and has the results to prove it. And so even at the current number on Will Zalatoris, I would still play it. Hideki, it's right there. I would still probably rather have a Hideki ticket than some of the guys that are shorter than him, but like the 20, 22-ish range is starting to push it. But if it gets any lower than that, I probably wouldn't go in that direction. The other two guys I added, Wyndham Clark and Cam Young, both on y'all's cards. So we have these guys split. Wyndham Clark, guys, it was like a fun story last year because everyone wanted to talk about like, oh, he's you know, it's cool. He went and got a sports psychologist and he talked through all his problems and all this stuff, and it was like this feel-good story. Now he's come in this season and just backed up everything you saw last year. It's no longer this feel-good story. The guy's just a really good golfer. I mean, he's just a good golfer.
Right now, he's one of the best golfers on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, he's just a good golfer.
That might say something about some of the other guys on the PGA Tour, but it says a lot about what he's done.
And if you're talking about these guys that I know that haven't won when they played it the first time, you're talking about a dude that's already a major winner. You're talking about a guy who's won multiple times on tour. You're talking about another guy, too, that has gone and stood the test, that stood up against a very difficult course in very difficult conditions, was able to do it. So if anyone could do it, I would take Wyndham Clark. And Wes, all the stuff that you said about Cam Young, listen, if I want distance, if I want, height, if I want like apex on drives, if I want all the stuff, like Cam Young checks all of those boxes. Now the recent results might not necessarily be there, and I know we're still chasing all that, but this number really just didn't match up where he...
double of what it was last year. And the fact that I think that he didn't really do anything wrong in the Valspar where he was runner-up. Peter Malnati just went bonkers putting, which he is known to do, and on a very short course.
So, guys, again, we will be back multiple times throughout the course of the week. Come in, check out any additional thoughts that we have on the podcast feed. Of course, we'll be here after the cut as well to give you the thoughts. If there's anything heading into the weekend that you may or may not want to add to your card, and when I say we, I mean them, because I'm about to get on a plane and head to Augusta myself. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. If you're listening to this over on VSiN, be sure and download the podcast and subscribe over there for some bonus coverage of what we're betting over on the Masters side of things. Guys, for Wes, for Kelley, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your Masters bets.